In the year 2000, Premonition, a modest horror film that intended to give a freshness to the genre, which at the time was in decline, arrived in theaters. And its premise really aroused the public's curiosity, causing the film to raise an expressive $10 million in its opening weekend in the US and become a success, generating a franchise with 4 more films later. When a teenager has a premonition that the plane he's on is going to explode, he and his friends end up getting off the plane. To everyone's surprise, the plane actually explodes on the trip they were supposed to be on. But the members of the group begin to die mysteriously, one by one, until the survivors decide to unite to try to understand what is happening, before they themselves become the next victims. Premonition, the screenplay for Final Destination, was written by James Wong, Glenn Morgan and Jeffrey Reddick, based on a story created by the latter and initially intended to be an episode of the series The X-Files. When a colleague of Reddick's who worked on the series read the content, saw that it had the potential to be a feature, they encouraged the group to adapt it to become a movie and then began production on the feature. In the story we meet Alex Browning, Devon Sawa, who is going on a trip to France with his high school class, when during boarding, he has a vision that the plane they are on will have an accident killing everyone on board. The young man freaks out and starts a riot inside the aircraft which causes his withdrawal from it. Along with him, 5 classmates and a teacher also end up leaving to appease the mood, and they would be relocated on the next flight and meet the rest of the class in Paris. The problem begins when the plane they were on takes off and minutes later suffers such an accident that Alex had a premonition and everyone starts to suspect the boy, finding everything very suspicious. This beginning can already impress and hold the attention of those who watch, as we will only know that the accident has not happened yet, when Alex wakes up sitting inside the aircraft and begins to see everything repeat itself exactly as we saw minutes before. Up until this point, we're still in awe of one of the most impressive plane crash scenes ever made in theaters, thanks to the realism bestowed upon it. After the impact of the scene and the realization that it all actually happens minutes after they get off the plane, we are definitely hooked to the plot, as we realize that something very strange is happening. Airport premonition. After the fateful episode, the 7 survivors, still traumatized, try to continue their lives, and due to the good narrative construction at the beginning, we already know a little bit of each one's personality. It is at this point in the story that things really get darker, when one of them dies in a strange way, and again Alex, even without having a real idea, predicted in his house minutes before the death of another one of the survivors. Premonition's big difference is the absence of a physical villain. We don't have a hockey mask and axe killer killing his victims, nor someone wearing a sweater and hat invading teenagers' dreams, or some serial killer obsessed with stalking his victims before he kills them. Here the villain is death itself, an entity without a body and physical appearance, which only lurks in the most trivial places possible. And when we realize that those people should have died in the plane crash, and now death is coming after each of them, the fun is in trying to predict how each of their lives will end. Alex always predicts in an unclear way how each of his companions will die, and so it's up to those who watch, from the protagonist's visions, to try to anticipate the ways in which that will come to pass. Never does a simple kitchen manage to convey as much tension as in this film, thanks to the direction that manages to create tense scenes in normal environments, where any object in the scene can serve the purposes of death. And speaking of deaths, get ready to see some of the most incredible and impactful deaths in cinema. The directors managed to surprise with one death more inventive than another, and this applies to the other films in the series. Premonition cast. Premonition has a competent and charismatic cast, original and creative story, and death scenes that are etched in the memory of those who watch and are certainly worth checking out. I also recommend the sequels that are fun and fulfill the role they have, which is to present creative deaths and show that in the end our final destination in the original title, is always the same, death. Hello Step, I ask you to subscribe to the channel, to strengthen us to put better content on the channel.